How to create an amazing twirled symmetry effect in Photoshop. Something like that. Well, how to do that? What I'm going to do is use a pattern source. The pattern source is going to be made up of a gradient, but it's going to use the erase tool to give a sort of rough edge to it. Now, the document I'm using, the source document, is 1000 by 1000 with 300 dpi and transparent background. The final result document is 3000 by 3000, 300 dpi and black. Now I'm going to use a gradient. Now you can create all kinds of gradients. I'm just going to show you a gradient. This gradient's got a transparency. So I'm going to use it in linear mode as well as blending mode of normal. So just click on it, bring up the gradient bar. What you can do, you can see the gradient bar is all made up, all the colours along the bottom, that bottom of the bar are grey. All grey because great for the colour randomness in the pattern symmetry effect. Far ends are going to be 0% opacity, so both ends have got transparency. Virtually all of that gradient is transparent. The only bit that's not transparent is right in the centre. So that black one along the top, that's 100%. So you've got this lovely sort of grey bar in the centre. Got a bit of texture to it, so click OK. Now apply it a couple of times. Now the end result that you're going to create will be different from mine, I'm certain. And you can create all kinds of different variations of that sort of type of gradient. But it gives it a nice sort of gradient shadow effect, which I like. So you've got a slight darkness to it, but it's still grey. And you can apply it at different angles, different origin points. Just apply it a couple of times. Thin ones, just create very, very narrow gradient to create a very thin bar like that. It's a layer. So what you can do, you can go to the erase tool. What I want to do is I'm going to add some erase around the edges. So I'm using 71, but you can vary the size of the brush stroke. I'm using 71 and I'm going to be fairly consistent with that, but you can use it as brush and just apply. I'm using a pen, just brush in all the way around the edge. Because I don't want a really sharp edge to it. Just want a nice, but I've got the transparency of the gradient. I've also got the transparency now from, but obviously a little bit more sharper transparency from this brush stroke. And you can see the end result. It's a sort of splatter design with that sort of structure within it, the gradient line there you can see. And that's what I want for that. And you can do all kinds of variations. You don't have to do this. You can maybe do it, create spots for it, lines, thin lines, different sort of brush strokes, whole range of different designs. I'm just going to go with a very, very basic, and I could do this, obviously do this for ages, but just want to go a certain distance and then I'm going to show the rest. Because I'm going to define that as a pattern. But also I'm going to squeeze it. Because I don't want it to be a rectangle. Could do it as a rectangle, it creates a nice patchy sort of design, but I'm going to squeeze that design. I'm going to use you could use the standard to scale it using the bounding box. And you can continue, obviously I could add some more arrays in there. But you can go to the edit menu and use the transform commands, and there's distort, there's perspective. I want to squeeze it in, so I want to just create a really nice squeezed in design. So you can do that with your bound box, just as easy as well. So edit and transform and distort. And go to the top left and top right and just drag those in. Squeeze the whole thing in. So it becomes a very sharp sort of... Now, I don't want that angle. It's not... Unfortunately, the one thing with the pattern symmetry effects There's no option really for rotation. So the only way to do it is to do it when you're creating the pattern itself. So press return there. But I'm going to save it anyway. I'm just going to define that as a pattern because I might use it later. But I like to create a couple of copies of these patterns. So I do it and then I will add another one or two. But it's edit menu and define pattern. Click OK. Because I might come back to it later. But what I want is that angle. I want it as horizontal. That's what really works with the lovely twirl. It probably works best just to do it that way. So again, edit and define pattern. But it was, like I say, it would be so nice if the pattern panel had the feature for defining the angle as well as the scale of the source before you start. It'd be a really nice feature. Don't know why it isn't there. And again, you can create other variations of it and edit and define. Many applications do have that sort of feature where you can just change it beforehand, tweak it. And so what I want to do now is I'm going to remove that. Don't want that bit. What I want to go is edit and fill. And I'm going to use pattern, that's the contents. And I'm going to go with custom pattern, the one I've just created, that one that's horizontal. So select that. You can see I've done lots of variations, tests with all this to see other designs created in a similar approach. It works, I say, best with that across that way. So select that. Make certain the script is on, because sometimes what happens in Photoshop, the script suddenly is not on anymore. Even though you've been using it all day, suddenly Photoshop will just reset it. So the script will not be on, but make certain the script is on and set the symmetry fill and click OK. And then you've got your twirl design. Now, a little bit more work needs to be done. I'm going to go with symmetry type 7. That's quite effective. But what I want to do before I do all that, I want to go to create a new layer. I always forget to do that. It's one of the first things I always do. I always go and try and create a new layer. So layer and new layer. And then go and use the edit and fill. Which is a pity why it's not like the new fill content options. It would be nice to actually have, if it would create a new layer by default. Anyway, it doesn't do that. So you can see all kinds of different designs can be created just by simply changing the translation, width and height. You can see that lovely twirl effect just being created there. You've got the splatter sort of going, as it cascades around. And you can change the pattern scale. Now, you're probably best to keep the pattern scale fairly about 1, maybe make it smaller, because it might go off the edge. I don't want it to go off the edge. But change the height and length. And the reason I keep the pattern scale fairly high initially is because if you keep the pattern scale fairly small, you can't see with the preview because there's no zoom feature in the preview. So unless you've got brilliant eyesight, you can't actually see the result. So it's nicer just to keep the pattern scale fairly high so you can see it, but it's nice to reduce it when you actually generate the result. Set the colour randomness up fairly high and set the brightness fairly high as well. So you can reduce it down so it will fit within the layer. Now, there's no guarantee it's going to fit within the layer, so you might have to do a bit of experimentation. It might require 0.7 or 0.8. So click OK. Just fits just about in the layer. More luck than judgment. And it's a layer, so you can reduce it in size. So you can now move that around You could turn it into a smart object. You could recolor it as well. You could apply effects to it now. You could go to the filter menu, apply stylize and oil paint. But what you can also do is Alt or Option and drag. Just duplicate it. And you've got that lovely twirl design. Fill in the entire screen. Now you could of course create that using brush strokes, but it'd be quite a lengthy exercise. So it's really quite easy, quick way of creating a very nice twirl cascade of colour using this approach. And you can resize these as well, or rotate them, or apply transformations to them, maybe the perspective, or distort. Instead I'm just going to flatten the image and then apply effects. You could apply renders such as lighting, oil paint, so stylize and oil paint. Set stylization fairly high, click OK. But if you say you want to give some depth to that, you could go to the render and use lighting so you can add some texture to it. So you can still go back to the original source material. I've still got the original source pattern. So I've got that design. Now I could then store that to my library. Just save it to your CC library. I've got that design. Now I can apply again, continue with the, can maybe apply effects to it, layer effects to it, add a shadow to it. Maybe distort it, maybe use other liquify, maybe squeeze it a bit more, make it thinner. Again, go back to the erase brush and erase a little bit more of the edges. So you've got the streaks there, you might want to remove them. Again, you can define that as a pattern. Or go back to the edit menu and define pattern. You could duplicate the design as well. Just duplicate it, create 3 or 4 copies, and maybe apply effects like blurs to give it some more depth. But you can see the structure, you've got that lovely gradient design still there. So that lovely lines and streaks of colour, obviously grayscale, are there. And you can change the size of the erase brush. Obviously I've been using 70 there, but you can go and maybe apply little dots to it, give it a mottling effect. Again, that can be then defined as another pattern. You can go back to the original design, that sign, go back to the start. And again, straight away I do the same mistake as before. Don't create it on a layer. So it'd be so nice if it had an automatic feature of create new layer inside that fill command. It'd be really useful. Sadly, it doesn't. So you can set all the values. So just experiment. Just experiment with the height and the width. Change the scale. You can see the design there. It's a beautiful sort of, again, even more intense than before. But it's on again, like I say, unfortunately just applied to the background layer. I don't want that. I want to spread it over the entire design. So just quickly go to layer and new layer. Takes a few seconds. Create a new layer and then edit and fill. Click OK. So obviously the settings are exactly the same as before. So now this time it's on a layer. And what you can do then, of course, you can turn it into a smart object via the layer menu if you wish, or use the Alt or Option key and drag and duplicate it. And again, fill in design with that lovely twirled symmetry design, mirror effect. So once you've done that, you can then, of course, go back to the layer menu and flatten the image and then apply effects such as blurs, oil paint, maybe apply colour adjustments to it. Go to the image menu, adjustments and colour lookup. Maybe turn it into black and white. All kinds of things can be done with that lovely, beautiful, colourful design there. Well, I hope you found this tutorial of interest. Always adding new tutorials about Photoshop and many, many other applications. Please add a comment or two, always appreciated. A dislike or like. Thank you much.